A very good evening and good afternoon to all our esteemed panelists, distinguished guests, and everyone joining us live today from different time zones. A very warm welcome to this edition of our live legal talk show, where today we have brought together global experts to decode the legal, regulatory, and economic dynamics shaping international business in India and Cyprus. My name is Prakarti Srivastava. I'm a legal associate at Hammurabi and Solomon Partners, India, and I'll be moderating today's session. It is truly an honor to be hosting a session that brings together thought legal experts from India and Cyprus, two jurisdictions that are rapidly strengthening their economic, regulatory, and investment linkages. Today's theme, that is, regulatory framework for doing business in Cyprus and India, opportunities and challenges, is one of immense global relevance. Both India and Cyprus are emerging as a strategic business destinations. India as one of world's fastest growing economies and Cyprus as a robust gateway to the EU market. In that backdrop, our discussion today will explore how businesses can navigate the regulatory framework of both jurisdictions, opportunities for cross-border investments and collaboration, sector-specific incentives, and the evolving legal ecosystem facilitating India and Cyprus partnerships. Through this dialogue, we aim to provide a deeper understanding of how companies, investors, and innovators can strategically position themselves to benefit from the strength of both countries, and to elucidate on the intricacies of the regulatory landscape of both the countries. We have with us a remarkable group of speakers who bring years of collective experience in international business law, taxation, mergers and acquisition, regulatory advisory, and other allied areas of law. With that, I would like to introduce our esteemed panelists and speakers for today. First, we have with us Mr. Andreas Christoforou, Managing Director of ASC Law Firm. Next, we have with us Ms. Thanuja Palla, Partner at Hammurabi and Solomon Partners Law Firm. And last but not the least, we have with us Mr. Shubham Tripathi, Senior Associate at Hammurabi and Solomon Partners Law Firm. We are delighted to have all the panelists for today's discussions. Thank you. Before we proceed, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce the law firms which are behind today's dialogue. That is Hammurabi and Solomon Partners and ASC Law Firms. Hammurabi and Solomon Partners is a leading full-service law firm established in the year 2001. Over the years, Hammurabi and Solomon Partners has built a reputation for providing comprehensive legal services across a wide spectrum of practice areas. The core areas of expertise include corporate advisory, mergers and acquisitions, data protection, compliance, litigation, arbitration, insolvency and bankruptcy, public policy, and real estate. We take pride in our team of over 100 plus professionals, including 18 plus experienced partners across Pan India, bringing a diverse legal expertise on the table. Our team operates across multiple regions in India, including Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Jharkhand, Ahmedabad, Chennai, and Hyderabad. Ranked among the top 15 law firms in India and with over 24 years of rich experience, Hammurabi's journey has been marked by stellar growth and recognition over the past 2 decades. Alongside Hammurabi and Solomon Partners, we are glad to be joined by another esteemed law firm from Cyprus, contributing to today's discussion, which is ASC Law Firm. ASC Law Firm is a boutique corporate and tax practice law firm in Nicosia, led by Mr. Andreas Christoforou. The firm specializes in cross-border structuring, Cyprus non-domicile tax planning, family office services, financial service licensing, and IP and technology structures. ASC advises HNWIs, entrepreneurs, and international businesses on relocation to Cyprus, holding and investment structures, and EU market entry. Known for its technical expertise and practical hands-on support, ASC serves as a trusted Cyprus partner for foreign law firms and professional advisors worldwide. So, before we move into the core discussion, allow me to briefly introduce the context for today's theme. As we dive into today's theme, it is significant to understand the bilateral relation that these two jurisdictions share with each other. India and Cyprus relations are rooted in a shared post-colonial legacy, common democratic values, and mutual supports in international fora. The foundation of this long-standing and strong relationship were laid by the first president of Cyprus, Mr. Makarios, and the first Prime Minister of India, that is Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. This diplomatic tie between the two countries came into effect when Cyprus became independent in 1962. And since then, for over past 63 years, India and Cyprus has been one of the most trustworthy friends of each other. Both countries adhere to diplomatic values and norms. They support similar positions on major regional and international issues and have collaborated constructively in the United Nations, Commonwealth, and other international fora. Over the recent few years, Cyprus and India have deepened their bilateral ties, marked by enhanced cooperation in investment, technology, shipping, renewable energy, and education. Cyprus is also recognized as a key economic partner for India, notably in FDI and financial collaboration. Cyprus is consistently being ranked among the top sources of FDI into India due to its favorable tax regime. Moreover, the signing of bilateral agreements came as a cherry on top, strengthening regulatory landscape in both the countries. From signing of agreement to avoid double taxation as early as in 1994 and the adoption of a joint declaration and action plan 2025 as recently as in this year, represents a solid foundation and journey for a stronger economic engagement between the two countries. Further, it is also important to mention that the relationship between the two nations is increasingly strategic. Cyprus acts as a natural gateway for Indian businesses seeking to access the European Union single market. This brings a number of opportunities for the Indian business to get access to EU market, which will be discussed in detail by our esteemed speakers in the later part of the webinar. Lastly, this strategic relationship between India and Cyprus, built on a foundation of long-standing diplomatic friendship and mutual cooperation, has profoundly elevated the economic corridor connecting the two nations. This alignment has done more than simply boost investor confidence. It has actively engineered a highly predictable and transparent business environment, presenting an opportunity to the business to flourish in the said regime. On that very note, let's deep dive into the theme for today's discussion and understand it from the perspectives and experience of our esteemed panelists. As I mentioned earlier, that Cyprus acts as a natural gateway for Indian businesses to the EU market. On that pretext, I would now like to invite Mr. Andreas to help us understand about the important and suitable corporate structuring model for Indian investor and businesses seeking to have market access in European Union through Cyprus. I would also request Mr. Andreas to shed some light on the regulatory regime which the Indian businesses would then have to adhere to. Over to you, Mr. Andreas.
So thank you very much for the introduction. It's a pleasure to contribute to today's discussion. Going back to your question, okay, naturally the appropriate corporate model will much depend on the intended business activities of the company, and of course the strategic objectives of the ultimate beneficial owners. In practice, the most frequently adopted structure, let's say, is a Cyprus private limited company, which may operate as either a holding vehicle, an operating entity, or a headquarters entity. Such a structure provides Indian businesses with an EU-established platform, which may be used for invoicing, trading, and of course accessing to European regulatory framework, while simultaneously offering significant tax efficiencies and legal advantages. So Cyprus companies benefit from full access to the EU market and enjoy strong international credibility. There is a competitive corporate tax rate within the EU of 12.5%, which is further enhanced by other incentives such as the national interest deduction or the IP box regime, which in essence minimizes the effective tax rate to 2.5%, the corporation tax rate. Dividend distributions are exempt from taxation in Cyprus. There is no outbound withholding tax, and companies can benefit from this, let's say, broad range of corporate incentives. And this also goes even further personal level. So UBOs or shareholders might gain from personal incentives as well, tax incentives. Cyprus also has an extensive network of double tax treaties. We have more than 65 double tax treaties in place, and also there are the EU regulations and directives such as the parent subsidiary directive and so on, which can be also utilized. Now, our jurisdiction integrates seamlessly with Indian operations, particularly as an EU headquarter or an Indian back office model, which enables efficient operational and tax planning. As for our regulatory regime, now we have a range of legislations. We have the local legislation, we have the EU legislation, OECD models, applicable double tax treaties depending on the structure, transfer pricing, and substance requirements. So to conclude, a Cyprus holding or operational NTD represents one of the most flexible, tax efficient, and internationally recognized structure for Indian companies seeking to enter the EU market, let's say, through Cyprus. Sorry, Prakarti, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. So thank you so much, Mr. Andreas, for such significant insights on how the Indian investors could have market access in EU through Cyprus. Now turning to the other side. India positioning itself as a natural partner for Cyprus and EU investors owing to India's robust economic trajectory and strong domestic demand. The bilateral engagements between India and Cyprus, for instance, the MOU signed between NSE International Exchange and the Cyprus Stock Exchange, and the launch of the India-Greece-Cyprus Business and Investment Council, and such other agreements, presents a platform for discussion on the effectiveness of such initiatives in strengthening the trade and economies of both the countries. In that context, I would now request Ms. Thanuja to share her insights on as to whether these bilateral engagements between India and Cyprus in the areas of trade and investment would strengthen the trade and economic relations between India and European Union in the long run? And if so, what all opportunities and challenges it will bring with itself? Over to you, Ms. Thanuja.
I said, thank you, Prakarti, and good evening, everyone, to all the distinguished panel members. So it was a very, like Andreas has given a broad description of Indian companies who want to access European Union market through Cyprus. Yes, I think, it's one of the wonderful opportunities for Indian markets, for Indian entrepreneurs, Indian businesses, especially because of this bilateral agreement that happened between India and Cyprus. So in trade and investment, and that can significantly, strengthen Indian-European Union economic relations in the longer run. And Cyprus acting as a gateway, as it is one of the members of European Union. So this is going to be a very good advantage for Indian entities to access more broader range of European Union market. Now, stronger ties with Cyprus, supported by its European Union membership, can help drive forward negotiations for a comprehensive India-European Union free trade agreement. And it can also establish strategic routes like the Indian Middle East Europe Economic Corridor, IMEC. So this is further reinforced, as Andreas said, by Cyprus' active support for deepening ties, strategic importance in the Mediterranean region, and role as an investment hub for Indian firms seeking access to wider European Union market. Now, how does this bilateral engagement between India and Cyprus strengthen India-European Union relations? Like recently on October 29th, I think the Cyprus foreign minister, he has given an addressing in Sapru House lecture at Indian Council of World Affairs in New Delhi. And the ministry is Konstantinos Kombos. And he said the successful conclusion of this bilateral agreement will not only strengthen India-European Union ties, but will also unlock immense potential opportunities for India and for all the European countries. He said with India emerging as a leader, as a leading voice in an increasing multipolar world, today Cyprus sees India not only as an old friend, but also as a partner for future cooperation. Now, Cyprus, I think, is among the top 10 investors in India, with cumulative investments of almost USD 14.65 billion during the period of April 2000 to March 2025. And this is the estimate made by Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, DPIIT, and making Cyprus as one of the largest investors in India from the European Union region. So these investments as FDI equity inflows were in sectors including software, automotive manufacturing, shipping, real estate, cargo handling, construction, and pharmaceuticals. So the best example of this close relationship between two countries is the fact that two shipping companies from Cyprus, that is Inter-Orient Navigation and Danship and Partners, have announced a collaboration to invest almost 10,000 crores in the Indian shipping sector, which is by far the largest FDI in India's shipping sector since this sector was opened, I think, for 100% FDI in 2025 by Government of India. So for Indian businesses, Cyprus offers a unique and accessible opportunity to enter into European markets with a supportive environment for innovation. So several Indian IT and digital service companies have started looking at Cyprus as a strategic base for providing services within the European Union market. So that way, I think this is going to act as a catalyst to strengthen our ties, not just with Cyprus. We have a long enduring relationship with them, but also, to access European Union market.
Thank you very much, Ms. Thanuja, for such an insightful response. And you have enlightened us very much on how Cyprus acting as a gateway for you has now been taking into shape and is now affecting and making an advantageous position for the investing companies in India. So, as we continue exploring the evolving dynamics of India and Cyprus business corporations, it becomes essential to look how India is also reshaping itself within a global supply chain ecosystem. With major policy thrusts like Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat, India is now steadily positioning itself as a competitive manufacturing and production hub, and it is creating new avenues for international investors and strategic partners. So, in this context, I will now move on to Mr. Shubham to share his insights on how these transformative initiatives, such as Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat, can complement the interest of Cyprus-based investors and whether they align with the broader industrial and trade objectives of the European Union. Over to you, Mr. Shubham.
Thank you, Prakarti, for the introduction and for handing over the reins to me. And indeed, it's an honor to be around such great company with such great professionals. So, I would like to start with a straightforward observation, something that we have talked about before as well. India and Cyprus are not just casual trading partners. I have some numbers for you. Cyprus ranks as eighth largest source of FDI into India, whereas India is among top 10 investors in Cyprus as well. This is purely not accidental. It is a recognition by both business and government that our participation and partnership, it creates structural advantages that neither nation can generate alone. So as we talked about, we have two pillars of India's manufacturing ambition. We have the Make in India initiative and the Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative. Atmanirbhar Bharat is a couple of Hindi words which translate to self-reliant India. Make in India was formally launched in September 2014 with such an audacious mandate: increase manufacturing contribution to GDP from 16% to 25%, and to create 100 million jobs. Now, more than a decade later, today, this initiative has facilitated approval of over 240,000 investment proposals, attracting more than $75 billion in FDI, which is foreign direct investment. FDI inflows in India have shown consistent growth, climbing from $45 billion in 2014 to 15 to a record 70 billion in 2023 to 2024. These numbers, they represent the confidence in India's business environment, legal stability, and commitment to intellectual property protection. Now coming on to the second pillar, Atmanirbhar Bharat. It is anchored by production linked incentive scheme. I am going to refer it as PLI henceforth. So these schemes were launched back in 2020. The PLI framework covers 14 key sectors, a few of which I'm going to list now. They are mobile manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, automobiles, advanced chemistry cell batteries, renewable energy, semiconductors, and among other industries. The investment impact here is substantial. Rupees 1.76 lakh crore, which is approximately 21 billion USD in committed investment. It has generated over 1.2 million direct and indirect jobs. As of financial year 2023-2024, the scheme has disbursed more than $1.16 billion in incentives, with combined sales from such PLI participation surpassing over $186 billion by March 2025. What this means operationally is this. If a Cyprus-based investor or corporation establishes manufacturing capacity in India's targeted sector, say electronic components, renewable energy equipment, or pharmaceutical APIs, they don't just gain access to India's domestic market, they become eligible for substantial PLIs, which are performance-linked incentives, duty concessions, and even technology development support. Let me now connect India's manufacturing push to specific sectors where Cyprus-based investors can meaningfully participate. Number one, electronics and components. India is experiencing an electronic revolution yet again. Just this month, in November 2025, the government has approved 17 electronics manufacturing component projects, which are worth more than $811 million. They are expected to generate more than $7 billion in revenue. These projects, they span over smartphones, IT hardware, wearables, medical electronics, renewable energy equipment, and defense application as well. Under the PLI scheme for electronics, manufacturing has surged 146% from $24 billion in 2020 to 2021 to $59 billion in FY 2024-2025. For a Cyprus-based company, this represents either direct manufacturing participation or joint venture opportunities with established Indian electronic players. Second, renewable energy. India has achieved a remarkable milestone. 50% of our installed electrical capacity now derives from non-fossil fuel sources. We have achieved 5 years ahead of what was targeted, which is 2030, as per the Paris Agreement commitment. Solar capacity alone has increased 42-fold from 2.82 gigawatts in 2014 to 123.13 gigawatts as of August 2025. The sector has attracted $23 billion in foreign investment since April 2020. The thing to keep in mind here is that India permits 100% foreign direct investment under automatic route for renewable energy generation and distribution projects. For Cyprus investors, this opens pathways not just in solar manufacturing, but in wind energy equipment, battery storage, and grid infrastructure development as well. Third, supply chain integration and MSME ecosystem. Here's a structural advantage that distinguishes India from other manufacturing hubs. The PLI scheme actively cascades benefits to the MSME sector as well. When anchor manufacturing units establish themselves in particular sector, they generate demand for a robust supplier base as well. They catalyze ancillary units in micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises as well. This creates opportunities for Cyprus investors to identify, partner with, and potentially consolidate India's emerging supply ecosystem, much as Cypriot firms have done in technology and digital services. Now, Prakriti, your question addresses something very crucial. How does India's manufacturing transformation aligned with European Union's industrial and trade objectives. And this is where Cyprus's unique position becomes very strategically vital. The European Union in itself is pursuing an aggressive industrial policy. The Net Zero Industry Act aims to ensure that EU manufacturing of strategic clean technologies approaches or reaches 40% of its deployment requirement by 2030. The EU is prioritizing semiconductors, batteries for electrical vehicles, renewable energy manufacturing, and critical raw materials processing. However, this is important. The EU also faces very realistic constraints. It cannot unilaterally substitute all its manufacturing requirements domestically, particularly given the supply chain disruptions and complexities and capital intensity that is usually involved with such projects. Here is where India's manufacturing narrative becomes complementary and not competitive, if I might add. India is not seeking to replace EU's manufacturing. India is building resilient, diversified supply chains as an alternative to over dependence on any single source, particularly given how geopolitical tensions with other major countries are going on, and supply chain vulnerabilities, which have been exposed by recent global disruption. This may be pandemic or war or other regional conflicts. When India expands electronics, pharmaceutical, and renewable energy manufacturing, the EU gains what it desperately requires: diversification of supply resources and enhanced supply chain resilience. Moreover, Cyprus's forthcoming EU presidency in early 2026 positions the island nation as a critical broker in this relationship. Cyprus has explicitly committed to supporting the India-EU free trade agreement that we were talking about before, with which both sides target for conclusion by end of this year. A completed FTA would establish preferential market access frameworks, reducing non-tariff barriers and regulatory uncertainties that currently complicate India-EU trade. Coming to the last part, I just want to synthesize the three concrete advantages for the viewers' considerations. First, the gateway functions. Cyprus, as an EU member state with favorable tax regimes and business policies, they allow Indian companies to establish European headquarters across the EU's 450 million customers and benefit from streamlined regulation. Simultaneously, Cypriot investors gain symmetrical access, establishing IP boxes, R&D centers, or regional coordination offices in Cyprus while manufacturing or sourcing from India. It creates a tax efficient, legally transparent structure which is fully compliant with EU regulations. Second, supply chain resilience and shared risk management, trade fragmentation, and other supply chain vulnerabilities, they have made diversification imperative. Cyprus-based investors, by participating in India's manufacturing expansions, simultaneously reduce concentration risk and position themselves advantageously should future trade dynamics shift. India's aspiration to become a global production hub is not rhetoric. It is backed by 1.97 lakh crores on PLI outlays, like I talked about before, demonstrable investment outcomes, and deliberate policy consistency. Cyprus's role as intermediary, gateway, and trusted partner makes Cypriot participation not incidental, but but strategically integral to both Indian growth and EU supply chain resilience. Over to you, Prakarti.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shubham, for giving such insights and explaining it so beautifully how India's investment strengths and how India's investment strategies is so important and so strategically aligned for the Cyprus investors, specifically with respect to different sectors, as you have explained it very beautifully. Thank you so much. Now, as Cyprus positions itself as a preferred jurisdiction for global investors, mobile professionals, and cross-border businesses, may I please now request Mr. Andreas to share his thoughts on how does Cyprus non-domicile regime, along with its broader corporate and personal taxation framework, offer competitive advantages to Indian investors while still maintaining an equitable and transparent fiscal environment. Additionally, I would also like Mr. Andreas to shed some light on what are the key tax implications or risk should the businesses consider when contemplating relocating and shifting tax residency to Cyprus. Over to you, Mr. Andreas.
Thank you once again. So yeah, the Cyprus non-dom regime, in essence, just to give you a brief introduction, an individual may be considered a tax resident in Cyprus if he either resides here for more than 183 days, which is 6 months and 1 day, or through the 60-day rule, meaning that an individual can stay in Cyprus for 60 days, but no place else for more than 183 days. So either route creates an individual, or that individual is considered to be a tax resident of Cyprus. Now, the Cyprus regime, the non-dom regime, provides targeted tax relief on passive income, such as dividends or interest, let's say. However, it ensures that all other types of income, such as employment income, business profits, Cyprus-sourced real estate income, those remain fully taxable. So this approach, it promotes fairness, transparency, and prevents misuse of the regime. Some of its key points is that it is fully aligned with the EU and the OECD requirements. It requires genuine presence of that individual to be in Cyprus and needs to show economic activity. The presence, as I said before, is either through the 183-day rule, so it's purely day-based, or through the 60-day rule. So we have these two tax residency, let's say, rules. Non-doms continue to contribute to Cyprus through applicable income tax, VAT, social insurance contributions, local investments, and there is a clear and transparent legislation which provides a high degree of predictability, compliance, and legal certainty. So the key tax implications. The non-dom regime can be highly beneficial, but must be done properly and must be managed properly. So as for the companies, let's say, they need to have substance requirements. The company must have real management and control in Cyprus through local directors, board meetings, and decision making. There is a risk of dual residency challenges if any of the countries which are party to the double tax treaty decide to claim residency. So this is where the tiebreaker rules must be satisfied. Also, there might be transfer pricing expectations for cross-border transactions with India or other group companies. So to conclude, Cyprus remains a compelling jurisdiction for international investors. It combines attractive tax features with strong transparency standards, real substance requirements, and full compliance with international tax frameworks. And this is why the non-dom can be considered an ideal regime, since it's one of the EU's most attractive tax framework.
Thank you, Mr. Andreas, for enlightening us and as to how Cyprus continues to play a strategic role as a preferred jurisdiction for investment structuring, offering both flexibility as well as tax efficiency. Moving further, as we look at the growing depth of Indian capital markets and the significant momentum in the mergers and acquisitions activity across various sectors, it becomes increasingly important for investors to understand how to structure efficient and compliant cross-border transactions. To help us navigate these complexities, I would now like to invite Ms. Thanuja to share her insights on the legal, financial, and regulatory factors that investors must keep in mind while formulating exit strategies in cross-border transactions between India and Cyprus. Over to you, Ms. Thanuja.
Thank you, Prakarti, once again. Right. I mean, in a cross-border transaction between India and Cyprus, the investor should be mindful of legal, regulatory, and tax implications in both the countries. Because when there is an exit strategy, I think we need to look into from both the country sides and then comply the regulations and the laws that are applicable to that particular commercial transaction. So investors must consider in the context of Indian framework, let's say there is an exit strategy that they're planning out. So investors must consider foreign exchange, FDI regulations here in India, and Cyprus, European Union-based legal framework, and of course the double taxation treaty agreement between the two countries. So when formulating exit strategies, so these are the three things I think the investors should definitely keep in mind and then strategize their exits. And key areas include ensuring compliance with FEMA rules for asset repatriation or navigation and transfer pricing rules, and Indian competition laws, and understanding Cyprus anti-money laundering and corporate transparency standards. So financial and legal due diligence is crucial for both the exit and initial investment, to confirm the transactions feasibility and avoid legal pitfalls. So Cyprus is one of the, like, as Andreas was explaining, the tax strategy or the tax framework in Cyprus, it looked more like Indian, structure, because it is also a common law country and both our countries are colonized once upon a time. So I think this is inspired by English common law. So this structure is familiar to international investors, financial institutions, and legal professionals. So it ensures predictability in dispute resolution and recognition of international business concepts and wide use of contract freedom and alignment with global commercial practices, because Cyprus being an English law country, a common law country. So this predictability makes Cyprus a favored jurisdiction for cross-border transactions, mergers, share purchase agreements, and investment vehicles. Now, coming down to, legal considerations. So let us look into each one of the aspect. Legal considerations, you have taxation, and you also need to look into regulatory aspects. So coming down to legal considerations in both the countries, like I said, comply with India's FEMA Management Act and Foreign Exchange Management Non-Debt Instrument Rules 2019 NDI rules regarding foreign direct investment and asset repatriation. Now, Cyprus European Union framework, be aware of Cyprus adherence to European Union directives on finance, corporate transparency, anti-money laundering, and this can provide legal certainty and ensure compliance with European Union access rules. Now, in Indian aspect, if you take, you also need to look into company law regulations for any corporate actions such as share transfers or winding up or exit for that matter. And of course, competition law, nevertheless, ensure compliance with Indian competition laws, particularly in strategic sales where acquirer's market position is going to be affected. Now, employment and labor laws, yes, ensure compliance with all relevant Indian and Cyprus employment and labor laws during the exit process. This is again very crucial. And dispute resolution, of course, in case of dispute, understand the mechanisms for dispute resolution, such as arbitration or litigation, and how they will be applied in a cross-border transaction. Now, coming down to the financial considerations, taxation. Well, Cyprus seems to be giving a lot, it has a big heart, giving a lot of incentives for foreign investors, especially Indian entities. But in the context of Indian taxes, be mindful of Indian corporate taxes, capital gains on investment, and transfer pricing regulations, like I said, which can affect net returns from exit. Now, repatriation or Cyprus and Indian Cyprus double tax treaty, understand the implications of the double taxation agreement and its rules and regulations, and of course, potential tax avoidance rules. Coming down to repatriation of profits and capital. Now, comply with FEMA rules for the repatriation of sale proceeds, whether it is an asset or share transfers. Strict adherence to valuation norms is very, very crucial in this. And the ease and limits of repatriation and are tied to the type of bank account used for the original investment and the receipt of sale proceeds. Like if you take NRE account, non-resident external account, if shares are purchased with funds from an NRE account or through fresh inward foreign currency remittances, both the principal investment amount and the capital gains are fully and freely repatriable without any upper limit. Okay. But if you take in the case of NRO account, that is non-resident ordinary account, if the shares were purchased using funds in the NRO account, which holds Indian sourced income, such as rents or dividends, etc., then the sale proceeds are repatriable subject to limit of USD 1 million per financial year, if it is an NRO account. Now, if you take FCNR account, that is foreign currency non-resident account, the funds in this account held as fixed deposits in foreign currency are fully repatriable on maturity without limit, as they were never converted into Indian rupees, right? So that is for, I mean, coming down to the taxation. Of course, one needs to, because it's a cross-border transaction, then please be aware of transfer pricing rules and regulations and certifications that you require, and to avoid scrutiny from tax authorities. And exit valuation, of course, consider how valuation methodologies will be assessed by regulators, especially for unlisted companies, where methods such as discounted cash flow are often required, right? And coming down to regulatory considerations in this cross-border transactions between India and Cyprus companies. So FDI and approval routes, as I've already mentioned, so determine whether the initial investment was made under the automatic or approval route in India. And this can affect the exit process as well. So particularly the need for RBI approvals, for the share transfers and all that. Now, lock-in periods, be aware of any mandatory lock-in periods required by Indian regulations before any investor can initiate a sale. Okay. And foreign exchange regulations, like I mentioned, it is FEMA regulations concerning foreign exchange transactions, including those related to capital account transactions and the transfer of securities. Now, anti-money laundering, again, ensure the transactions with anti-money laundering and know your customer requirements in India and Cyprus and any other relevant jurisdiction. And coming down to investment vehicle compliance, again, if the investment was made through a specific vehicle, a special purpose vehicle has been created for that particular commercial transaction, such as investment trust or a real estate investment trust, follow the regulations governing that structure. I think for the limited amount of time I have, this is what I could cover. Right. Thank you.
That was a very, very detailed and comprehensive perspectives from Ms. Thanuja as to how all the legal and financial regulatory factors that every investor has to keep in mind while making any kind of cross-border transaction. So that was a very comprehensive perspective, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, building on the regulatory dimensions of cross-border structuring, as we discussed, another critical area that is rapidly reshaping international business operations is that of data protection and privacy compliance. With India introducing a more robust and modern data protection regime, the implications for cross-border transactions, especially with jurisdiction like Cyprus, are significant and evolving and a matter of discussion. And to help us understand how these regulatory developments are influencing cross-border collaborations and what compliance strategies investors should adopt, I would like to invite Mr. Shubham to share his insights on this particular issue. Mr. Shubham, over to you.
Thank you, Prakarti. As we've been seeing it over the past 1 week, India had the Data Protection Act, the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, which was enacted in 2023, and currently it's awaiting full implementation through finalization of the draft rules, which happened in the past few days. Now, I would like to underscore by saying that these rules and this entire legal framework, they do not represent a barrier to cross-border commerce, but it's rather a structured legal framework When properly understood, it creates a lot of predictability for international partnerships. For any Cyprus-based investors and businesses that are already collaborating with Indian counterparts, they don't need to be afraid of it. This is pretty much in line with what GDPR has to offer. So I would like to just underscore uh, the most strategically significant feature of the Indian data protection law, which is Section 16 of the DPDP which has something that is called a negative list. Unlike the GDPR, which has the adequacy determination model, which permits data transfer only to pre-approved countries, India has inverted this logic entirely. Under Section 16, cross-border transfers of personal data are permitted by default to all countries except those have been explicitly listed by the central government. This has not happened thus far, but we predict that it's going to happen happening in the future. This should not be considered as a regulatory caution, but this should be regulatory confidence. What does this mean operationally for Cyprus-based Indian business collaborations? It means that unless and until Cyprus is specifically blacklisted, which is a very unlikely scenario given Cyprus's status as an EU member, which is a robust data protection law, this is not going to happen. So the data can flow between Indian and Cypriot entities without requiring pre-approval, adequacy determination, or government clearance. For Cyprus-based fintech companies, IT service providers, and multinational corporations operating joint ventures with Indian partners, this architecture creates a permissive baseline for cross-border data flows. I also want to touch upon something which are standard contractual clauses and data processing agreement. Now, the DPDP Act itself does not prescribe any sort of standard contractual clauses, SCCs, which are comparable to those mandated under GDPR for cross-border data transfers. However, the absence of prescribed SCCs do not eliminate the need for robust contractual work with governed data transfer between Cyprus and Indian entities. Best practices dictate that Cyprus and Indian data transfer agreement should incorporate several elements like clear designation of roles, purpose limitation clauses, data minimization commitments, security obligations, and so on and so forth. So India does not have such SCCs as of now. When they come, they can be incorporated in the agreements, but it's always very good practice to have these clauses from the go. Now I want to address Cyprus's again unique position in facilitating India compliant cross-border data operations. Cyprus, as an EU member state, operates within the GDPR regulatory framework. It is one of the most stringent data protection regimes in the world. Cypriot businesses and legal professionals are habituated to rigorous data protection compliance, which is privacy by design principle, data protection impact assessments, breach notification requirements, and data protection officer appointments. There are certain words, certain terminological differences that exist. We have data principal vis-a-vis data subject, data fiduciary vis-a-vis data controller. But the underlying compliance are mostly convergent. Cypriot firms already maintaining GDPR compliance can adapt existing policies, procedure, and technical safeguards to Indian requirement without wholesome redesign. Moreover, Cyprus's deepening economic relationship with India, which is evidenced by Cyprus ranking as the 8th largest source of AI, like we talked before, and the establishment of LTI Mindtree's AI and Digital Center in Nicosia, and the introduction of India's UPI payment system through Eurobank Cyprus. This all signals institutional confidence in cross-border data collaboration. Indian IT firms are entering Cyprus not merely to provide services, but to position themselves strategically within the EU digital single market, leveraging Cyprus's stable regulatory environment, EU compliant framework, and India-Cyprus taxation avoidance agreement, like Thanuja ma'am talked about. This two-way flow creates natural synergies for data compliance. Indian companies gain access to EU standard data protection expertise, and Cypriot companies gain operational insights into India's regulatory landscape. Over to you, Prakarti.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shubham, for giving such insights on the data protection regime in India and how the same will be affecting now for Cyprus. So with that, we mark the end of today's session. I express my sincere gratitude to our panelists, Mr. Shubham, Mr. Thanuja, and Mr. Andreas, for their thoughtful perspectives and sharing all the insights about the topic. And I also express my gratitude to all the participants and the viewers for joining us today and hearing us with such sincerity. Thank you so much all for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
So thank you, everybody.